Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. It's not an unusual situation in this part of the Middle East, but Israelis are looking at a split screen right now. All eyes are on the brutal crackdown on the mass protests in Iran and growing tensions between President Donald Trump as the U.S. positions aircraft carriers and other equipment in place to keep the option of military intervention against Iran open, something that we know in Israel is likely to affect us too. And in parallel with that situation is the movement, finally, on the second phase of Trump's 20-point plan for the future of Gaza, which revolves around the ambitiously titled Board of Peace. Haaretz diplomatic correspondent Lisa Rozovsky joins me for an update on how Trump's vision is coming together and how it isn't, with many roadblocks on the way. There are Western European countries who aren't eager to be part of this Trump adventure, and we'll discuss their reasons. There are also Israeli misgivings over Turkey and Qatar's participation and the strange situation of Trump inviting the leaders of both Russia and Ukraine to join his peace board while their two countries are at war. But first, we take a look at what most of the headlines are not paying attention to: how the people of Gaza feel about Trump's vision for their future and how he plans on achieving it. Here to talk about it is journalist Nagham Zbeedat, who has been closely covering the topic for Haaretz. Those conversations are coming up.
I'm Esther Solomon, Editor-in-Chief of Haaretz English. Around the world, the fight is on to preserve critical and independent media. Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, upholds its long tradition of accurate, committed, and incisive journalism, refusing to bend its reporting to pressure from any government or leader. A digital subscription to Haaretz gives you up-to-the-minute news and analysis in English from journalists who live Israel's reality and are committed to covering the Middle East and its global repercussions. At the same time, your subscription supports the cause of a free press that holds the powerful to account in Israel and around the world. I invite you to become a subscriber to Haaretz now. Just go to Haaretz.com and use the code Haaretz10, that's Haaretz with the number 10, for 10% off an annual subscription.
Nagham Zbeedat, welcome to the podcast again.
Hi, thank you for having me, Alison.
Nagham, your reporting finds a distinct lack of enthusiasm for the Board of Peace among Palestinians in Gaza. Can you tell us why, in general, they're not so excited about it?
Palestinians in Gaza are not as excited as one might think about the declaration of Board of Peace because it lacks the Palestinians' presence in it. Therefore, it lacks the Palestinian voice that will talk about or will manage or will decide on Palestinians' matters that speak to the people of Gaza.
So all of the power is coming from the board, the countries, the international board, and you're saying that it doesn't seem like there's going to be any real power in Palestinian hands?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't include the Palestinian voice, how will it change the facts and the stories of Palestinians themselves if it's not coming from inside?
But there is going to be this Palestinian technocratic group that is supposed to manage life in Gaza underneath the auspices of the Board of Peace. Officially, it will be called the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, NCAG. A technocratic committee made up of Palestinians overseen by the Office of the High Representative, Dr. Nabil Ali-Shat, who previously served as Deputy Transportation Minister in the Palestinian Authority. Who is Nabil Ali-Shat, and what do the Palestinians in Gaza think of him?
Set aside who he is and what he's going to do, although Palestinians in Gaza will hold on any slight of hope that will come from Palestinians themselves, giving the executive committee that was assigned. However, it is common or it is widely thought that believed that the final decisions and the actual change, it will come from higher above, from the Board of Peace, not from the committee itself. So any hope, any faith in the committee is really, really slim. And therefore, the change is not going to be as powerful as we might expect or as we might want it to be. I was talking to people about it, Palestinians from Gaza. I was talking to them about it and about the executive committee. Some of them are saying that it's not about ending crisis, but rather than managing it. And it's not about ending the war, but rather about reproducing ideas and policies and the thoughts about how to manage Gaza rather than end the suffer of its people.
Is there sort of an end vision of what Palestinians in Gaza want? What if they were dreaming, or their ideal end game for this? What do they picture? What do they imagine?
I think it would be about a Palestinian voice, a Palestinian power that would control Gaza. It might change from one person to another. I remember early in the war, I had a conversation with a lawyer from Gaza, and he told me, I don't care who control Gaza, even if it was the Israeli side, as long as it will put an end to the war and the suffering of people in there. At large, mainly, Palestinians would want a Palestinian person from the people who suffered their suffer, who lived throughout the war that they lived, to manage and control the matters of the Strip.
We're not talking about elections. We're not talking about the people of Gaza getting in the election booth and being able to choose if they want Hamas to remain in control of Gaza, if they want the Palestinian Authority. It seems like that this technocratic board is going to be drawn a great deal from the Palestinian Authority, even though the Israeli government currently isn't so crazy about it. So how will this feel, if it has any legitimacy among the people, if they're not having any hand in the choice? Or they just resigned to the fact that there's not going to be free elections? If there have been free elections, they're going to be told who their leaders are.
The lack of option would force them into accepting the circumstances that they are put in. As long as there is no more airstrikes, as long as food is on the shelf, as long as there is water, shelter, bed clothes coming in, and medical care, I think they would temporarily be okay with any body or government that is taking control of their matters. As long as it puts an end or some peace to the people in Gaza, they would be okay with it. If we're gonna talk about the long run, a major change is required and is wanted from the Palestinians themselves, although many of them believe that Hamas won't disarm.
From your conversations and from what you see in social media, which you follow very intensively, what are the feelings about Hamas? Is there a feeling of pride of the fact that they, put up a fight for 2 years and were not defeated? Is there anger at the fact of what they've brought upon Gaza? Is there continued ideological support of their mission and their charter? Or is there just a very practical feeling that all of the things you mentioned, the healthcare and the food and rebuilding, is not going to happen under Hamas rule, therefore they need an alternative? What is the general range of attitudes towards Hamas that you've observed in your communications with people in Gaza? And I should point out, you can't go to Gaza and interview them. The international press can't get into Gaza really and interview them. So this is the best we can do, is trying to gauge what public sentiment is.
There is a distinct difference between respect and support, and while Hamas may have the respect of some of the Palestinians in Gaza, or maybe many of Palestinians in Gaza, but the support since the beginning of the war has de-escalated and decreased, especially after the continuation of war and many ceasefire deals that were abolished, whether it's from Israel or from Hamas. But the fact that the war kept going on until this moment and the people in Gaza had to survive and fight a fight that they didn't choose themselves. It cost Hamas a really huge support and respect from people. And as I said, while many Palestinians still support Hamas for their decisions, for their stances, and for holding up for 2 years, they lost a lot of support because of, many people would say selfish reasons for beginning a war that Palestinians in Gaza did not choose to go for.
Are many of them so eager to get rid of Hamas again that you think that they would accept this U.S.-led international stabilization force, kind of being the people keeping security on the streets, that anything short of Israeli reoccupation is okay with them? Or is there suspicion about what this international stabilization force will bring?
Not being in support with Hamas does not align for many Palestinians in Gaza to be in support with the U.S. As long as while they say no to Hamas, they're not going to say yes to the U.S., especially with the U.S. complicity and cooperation with the Israeli army in this war. Generally, the U.S. is viewed for Palestinians the same as Israel. So any government or group that is going to come from the U.S. will not be welcomed with open arms.
Will it be called occupation, do you think, if there's international forces on the streets of Gaza?
It is called occupation. It is called another form of occupation.
You reported on an Egyptian journalist who said that Arab abandonment had found, quote, a safe hiding place within the Trump plan. That kind of contradicts the conventional wisdom that this plan is pulling more direct Arab involvement in the future of Gaza than ever before. How do you, frame that in terms of the plan is allowing the Arab countries to get away with ignoring Gaza, or that it's forcing them to engage in it more closely?
I think what he meant, it was about the lack of effort or the lack of support that they have shown, little support that they have shown to Palestinians during the war, whether they are in the West Bank, Gaza, or anywhere. Basically, during the war and now, even after, Trump's plan is considered a hideout for them. It's not engaging with the Palestinians matter and the Gazan matters, but rather enabling Trump's plan to show that it is a peace deal, it is a peace agreement, when in fact it's nothing that voices Palestinians in Gaza.
What are people in the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority, Palestinian citizens of Israel, are their thoughts and sentiments similar to those of people in Gaza, or are there other outside Palestinian voices with varying views?
While they may be divided and separated by walls and checkpoints, Palestinians in Israel, the West Bank, and in Gaza will share the same thoughts and ideas regarding these matters.
So they're as skeptical as the Gazans themselves from what you're reading and seeing and speaking to people?
They are.
Nagham, the emergency calls regarding a famine in Gaza have faded away since the ceasefire began. We don't see much coverage of the humanitarian situation since it was announced, except for your reporting, of course. So please tell us, what is the overall state of Gaza, particularly as the winter weather has hit? How are people feeling? Do they feel a difference since the bombs stopped dropping? Is the situation much better, or does it still seem rather desperate?
It is really important to highlight the fact that in Gaza, different locations endure different situations and conditions. For example, Palestinians in northern Gaza, such as Gaza City, have other troubles and issues than the ones who live in southern Gaza, Khan Yunis, for example. While Palestinians in Gaza City, as I am told, they view what happened as a ceasefire, as a post-war event. As long as there are no airstrikes, as long as there are food on the shelves of the markets, then the war has ended. However, for Palestinians in southern Gaza, as I said, in Khan Yunis, the expansion of the yellow line, one day you would wake up and you would find your house that wasn't in the yellow line is beyond the yellow line, and you would have to evacuate.
Reminding listeners that the yellow line is the supposed line that divides the area where Hamas remains in control to the half bordering Israel where the IDF is in full control.
Exactly. The expansion of the Yellow Line. The IDF has set training stations in several locations throughout the Gaza Strip, and one of them is near Mawasi Khan Yunis, which is a residential area. A lot of refugee camps and tents are set up there. They're shooting, and that shooting might be random, that it would reach the refugee camps, and it did harm and injure some of the people in there. There are still some several and random targeting of civilians in there. Still lack of food, lack of shelter, lack of medical care. The war is still happening, but since the ceasefire, it is happening in silence mood.
And what are people's state of mind? I mean, the loss of life and, the way people's lives have been upended and disrupted. You're actually speaking and, exchanging views and opinions and feelings. What are some of the voices that stick with you after you speak with them and the people in Gaza?
I feel it's like giving up. That stuck with me, especially after the announcement of ceasefire, that they lost hope on their suffering to end at all, because if the ceasefire is announced and everybody's acting like the war has ended, but for them they're still living the war, the actual one, then what would stop their suffering? If technically and formally the war ended, what would end it for them? So I think it's giving up. The form and the mental set of giving up that is stuck with me.
Well, we hope that there's something happening soon that will give them some hope. I don't know how much hope we can place in the Board of Peace, but at least it's movement, and at least the war is not going full force the way it was. Nagham Zbeedat, as always, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and speaking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is a very exciting day. Long in the making, and many countries have just received their notice, and everybody wants to be a part of it. And we'll work with many others, including the United Nations. We have one of the most important meetings of all, the official formation of what is known as the Board of Peace.
Lisa Rozovsky, Haaretz diplomatic correspondent, welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you.
Lisa, if all goes as planned, by the time listeners are hearing this, the official inauguration ceremony will have been held at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, where the member states of the Board of Peace will sign its charter. It seems highly unlikely at this moment that all the countries that Trump wants represented on this board are going to sign on the dotted line at this ceremony just because he says so. He's not happy about that, obviously. Can you tell us who the countries are who have jumped on board with this project quickly and who is hesitating to do it and why?
Yeah, I think that it would be fair to say that various U.S. protégés and Trump open admirers across the globe are joining proudly, like Argentina, Paraguay, Belarus. Lukashenko just made this deal with Trump where he released a bunch of high-profile political prisoners in exchange for lift sanctions.
So signing on the Board of Peace was the cherry on the sundae.
I would say so, yes. And of course, some important Middle Eastern countries who also signed. It seems like Qatar is on board. UAE stated officially that they're on board. Egypt is on board. So it looks like there is an interesting, mixture of autocratic and populist regimes who are definitely on board versus, the good old European Western countries for now, with France openly stated that it's out. Britain, who will most probably stay out of it. Sweden, who said it won't be on board. And I think that maybe one of the most interesting questions right now is whether Trump is going to succeed in dividing the EU, because different people say that it's probable that Meloni of Italy would like to join. She already reacted to it initially in a positive way. Everything's open.
So is this about the fact that they happen to be clashing with the same U.S. president over his plans to acquire Greenland from Denmark, that they have issues with what's going on in Venezuela, what's going on domestically in the United States is a whole other story? Or is this expressing doubt in the actual project of the Board of Peace?
I think it's all of the above. Obviously, Greenland, like when you are being squeezed and threatened by the U.S., over Greenland, is pretty bad timing to be joining the Board of Peace chaired by Trump, who basically has, a veto power and over everything there. The very fact that you need to basically give up your veto power in the United Nations Security Council and to just bow to Trump is not a very attractive offer.
Yeah, the long list of countries that Trump is putting in this thing, I mean, Paraguay and Argentina.
Kosovo.
It made no sense to me until I saw that you wrote that the Charter for the Board of Peace suggests that Trump is beginning to position it as a rival to the United Nations, despite the fact that it's supposed to be established with the purpose of managing Gaza's reconstruction. And you wrote that the document doesn't even mention Gaza by name.
It doesn't. The resolution that not exactly authorized but supported the Board of Peace was accepted by the Security Council. And now they're saying, okay, thank you very much. Now we're doing something entirely different. And actually, we are creating a mechanism that would compete with the UN.
Yeah, I've seen that the founding charter calls for, quote, the courage to depart from institutions that have too often failed. And that's not so subtle reference to the United Nations.
I think many countries, many nations, many diplomats across the world would sign on to the saying that the United Nations doesn't do a very good job in conflict solving.
So this could be a pilot project, and next we'll have the American-led boards of peace for Venezuela, for Greenland, for Panama, for Ukraine.
The charter of this Board of Peace openly states that it's not aimed to only resolve the Gaza situation. It's aimed to solve conflicts and problems all over the world. So Gaza would, yes, exactly be like sort of a pilot.
Speaking of Ukraine, which we mentioned, Trump thinks that both Vladimir Putin of Russia and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine will sign on to sit together on the Board of Peace, even as their own two countries are at war. Do you see this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think the very fact that Putin, who is sort of a symbol of the war itself, was invited to the Board of Peace says a lot about the nature of this Board of Peace. It's very unlikely that he would submit himself to Trump in this way and would be joining. So I don't think we'll be seeing Russia and Ukraine sitting on one Board of Peace. Obviously, I don't think we would see President Xi of China sitting on this board, obviously. And that's one of the reasons why it might be more effective than the UN Security Council, but it would also not represent real global consensus.
Even Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has, I would think, in accepting this plan, made many concessions which have been really poison to the Israeli right over the years, this amount of international involvement in the fate of what's going on in and around Israel. Even he waited kind of until the last minute to say, yeah, I'm agree to signing this. I'm going to be on the Board of Peace. It took him a while to get invited, of course. He probably has little choice in the matter. If Donald Trump invites him, he's going to have to say yes. But there are problems with Israel's participation under this government, aren't there? The direct involvement of Qatar and of Turkey in the Board of Peace, the amount of control they're going to have, and the prospect, the possibility that their soldiers could be in this international stabilization force has really sort of raised hackles on the Israeli right.
Officially, the problem Netanyahu has is not with the upper Board of Peace, it's with Gaza Executive Board, which is a part of the Board of Peace, but like sort of a level under. Among few members of this executive board are high-level representatives of UAE, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. And those are the people who are actually going to deal with Gaza and supposedly will have some actual say on what's going on with Gaza. So that's the problem that he has. The upper board, which will ultimately just need to say yes to Trump's proposals, to be on it or not to be on it, and whoever is on it I think it's less important, but it has like a symbolic importance. So obviously, yes, Netanyahu said yes to this. And regarding the troops, look, Qatar doesn't have a real army. So it's not like Qatar can or intends to send actual Qatari troops to Gaza. So there's nothing to discuss.
The Palestinian level of the plan of the Board of Peace, the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, is led by an official who previously served in the Palestinian Authority. And we've heard a lot out of the Netanyahu government against having the Palestinian Authority involved in the running of Gaza. Does the fact that Netanyahu has signed on to this mean that he's basically resigned himself to the fact that there's going to be a lot of involvement by the Palestinian Authority?
First of all, I don't think you have lots of Palestinian professionals or high-level specialists in any field who were not involved with the Palestinian Authority or with Hamas. At some point, Israel obviously vetted those people. So it's okay with the Israeli authorities, with the Israeli military establishment. As our colleague Jackie Khoury reported, those Palestinian technocrats, who most of which now are physically in Egypt, they are not let into Gaza by the Israeli authorities, at least according to Palestinian sources. One of the reasons for it might be that the Rafah crossing is simply closed. And the reason it's closed is because Netanyahu does not want to open it in both directions, which is the clear demand of Egypt, and which is actually stated on the 20-point plan by Donald Trump. It's supposed to be open in both directions. If we go deeper into this, who needs to operate this crossing? It's ultimately Palestinian Authority force supported by EUBAM, which is like a European Union force that would like watch over it, basically. So all of this is a political problem for Bibi. I suppose that is one of the reasons why all of this is still stuck.
Lisa, it all sounds very complicated, so I'm very glad we have you on the job at Haaretz to follow everything that's happening and explain it to the rest of us, both in Haaretz and on the podcast.
Thanks, Allison.
And that's it for this episode of the Haaretz Podcast. Thanks to my guests, Nagham Zbeedat and Lisa Rozovsky, and to producer and editor Adi Shacham. If you want to continue to listen to our podcast, make sure you don't miss an episode. Please subscribe to us on Apple, on Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're so inclined, leave a comment and leave us a 5-star rating, and that way more people can find us. And of course, to keep up with all the latest news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Allison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.